Hi, and welcome to Terry Talks Movies, and welcome to Science Fiction Saturday. This time we're hitting the 1960s and the 1970s. So we're doing the 1970s first and the 1960s second because we're working to a crescendo. To be honest, the 1970s movie is not good, but it's fun, and it's interesting, and it's weird, and it's entertaining. The 1960s movie, I think, is incredibly underrated and may have influenced, among other people, David Cronenberg. So let's get started with 1978 and a very small film called Laserblast. Laserblast, 1978, American independent science fiction film, it says here. Directed by Michael Ray, who never directed anything else. It was produced, however, by Charles Band, who did a lot of the really fun, low-budget science fiction and horror movies coming out of America in the 1970s and 1980s. Stars Kim Milford, Cheryl Rainbow Smith, Gianni Russo, Keenan Wynn, and Roddy McDowall, each of whom worked for one day, and an early role from Eddie Deason playing the same kind of character Eddie Deason always played. And it says here on Wikipedia, the plot follows an unhappy teenage loner who discovers an alien laser cannon and goes on a murderous rampage seeking vengeance against those he feels have wronged him. This movie got a theatrical release here in Australia, I know, because I saw it at the Town Cinema in Sydney in 1978. And it's got one of the best moments in any 1970s science fiction movie, which I've played at the start of this video, where the kid, Billy, shoots a Star Wars billboard and blows it apart. Yes, I know it's vulgar, but it's in there, and I kind of like it. It's a year after Star Wars came out. Kim Milford, the guy who plays Billy, the guy with the alien laser gun on his arm, kind of looks like a Temu version of Mark Hamill. It's like the one purely wonderful moment in this otherwise low budget and grindhouse second feature kind of movie. And to be honest, Kim Milford, who plays Billy, has no riz. He does not have a warm on-screen personality at all. And that's part of the fun. Cheryl Rainbow Smith, who plays his girlfriend, is a lot better. She knows how to perform for a camera. And she went on to do a whole bunch of cult movies in the 70s and 80s. Her character's name is Kathy, and Keenan Wynn plays her grandfather, an ex-military guy, who serves no plot purpose in the movie, apart from giving the man in black kind of government official, played by Gianni Russo, somebody to talk about the fact that they've been looking for aliens for years. He's got absolutely no plot purpose. He's playing a half-senile old ex-soldier, and that's the extent of his contribution to the movie. Roddy McDowall, on the other hand, plays a doctor who is studying a sample given to him by Billy, because to make the laser gun work, Billy also has to wear a pendant on his chest, and the pendant is burning something into his flesh. And at his girlfriend's insistence, he goes to the doctor, played by Roddy McDowall, and Roddy McDowall gives fair value for his one day of work on this. Apparently, he was paid $300 for the role, and he used it to get his car repaired. But he gives good value playing the character. It's like a glass of water in the desert, the Roddy McDowall role in this, because at last you get somebody who's playing a character and not somebody who's playing a stereotype. And I really appreciated that in this one. We get a pair of local cops who sit in their cop car waiting for speeders and smoking dope, because it is the 1970s. Those characters are very, very cliched. Eddie Deason's character, Froggy, is the sidekick of the bad boy in the social group that Billy and Kathy are in. And there are some scenes with Froggy and that bad boy at a party, which would have played significantly differently in a modern film, because they get away with some acts that just wouldn't sit in a modern movie. And I found that kind of shocking. The other saving grace of Laserblast, the other real saving grace of Laserblast is they've got some pretty good special effects in there. The aliens who come down and deal with this laser gun and the people who are shooting it are really nice stop motion aliens. They don't look humanoid at all. They look like lizard fetuses. They move really well. The stop motion, which is done by a guy called Dave Allen. And the aliens in this one look good. Yes, you know the stop motion because you always know the stop motion. They seem to have character and personality. They blink, their eyes move in their heads. They don't move at all like a human being. And they sitting in a spaceship that looks kind of groovy for a 1970s movie. And they seem to have characters as well, which is more than you can say for some of the actors in this one. But I really love the aliens in this. The aliens make it work. The laser special effects are great. And watching the movie, you can kind of see what they were trying to do. And in fact, the writers of the film said that what they were doing is giving a character who was not unlike James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause and giving him an incredibly powerful alien weapon. And they said they were inspired by Star Wars and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which I find disappointing. They were, and it was that period in the 1970s when people thought that those things were good science fiction. As Billy uses this laser gun, he starts turning green and monstrous. There's some really nice practical facial makeup for him in this one as well. The laser blast effects are very effective. They're used sparingly, but they're very, very good. And there are a lot of exploding cars in this movie. Anytime you see a car that's more than 10 or 15 years old in this movie, and you got to remember it's 1978, you know at some stage it's going to get blown up. There are a lot of vintage cars in this movie, which in 1978 were looked on as junkers. But now you'll go, they just blew up a beautiful classic 1950s car for this silly little movie. And these days it'll be worth $80,000. I kind of like that. I like the idea that all of these older cars that they obviously got very, very cheaply and blew up with some quite effective pyrotechnics would now be looked on as classics and would now be treasured rather than discarded and dismissed and blown up. It's like the old car that Brad Dourif drives in Wise Blood. It's seen as a junker, but it's actually a classic old car, which needed a bit of love and care and would have been a beautiful looking vehicle if it had gotten it. You could do a whole thing on classic old cars and the sad ends they came to in various movies. I'm not going to, but feel free to do it if you wanted. And of course, because Billy turns into a green, ugly-faced creature when he's using this gun with the pendant, the movie does have aspects of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in it. When he takes off the pendant and puts the gun away, he's back to himself, except for a burn or some kind of tumor that's growing on his chest. Apart from that, he is himself. To do a bit of a spoiler at the end, the movie ends with Billy rampaging through a town's streets, and the town's obviously a Hollywood backlot that they hide for a few days. And so they blow up things like a newsstand and a letterbox and a whole bunch of other things, and a couple of buildings, which were obviously set up to be blown up in movies. But the change between the landscapes and the suburban areas they have in Santa Clarita, where they filmed most of the movie, and the Hollywood backlot that they have for the pyrotechnic beasts at the end, are really obvious. And I think that lets the movie down. The movie has a good sense of place in the kind of edge of Los Angeles, deserty landscapes around Santa Clarita at the time. But when they cut to the rampage, it's very much a Hollywood backlot, which is disappointing. But the aliens come back and they fix things for everybody except Billy. Laserblast is a movie that's copped a lot of shit over the years. Mystery Science Theater 3000 did a pastiche of it and mocked it. But I think it's a kind of honest little film. It tries to do something. It doesn't do it well. It doesn't have the actors to do it well. It doesn't have the crew to do it well, except on the pyrotechnics and the special effects side of things, and in the choice of classic character actors they have on for a day. But for the most part, I think it's an honest piece of work. It's not great. It's not fantastic. It's not going to be a movie you're going to recommend to your friends, but it's an honest little 1970s movie that was trying to scoop up some of the cash that was overflowing from Star Wars. There are a lot of movies that were trying to do that at the time, and most of them are a lot more cringe than Laserblast is, apart from that one party scene in there. Revisiting it was fun, and it was one of those films where, yes, you can see all of the flaws in them and all of the stuff that doesn't work, but then you get this little kernel of, hey, look at that. And that stuff was the stuff that will see you through on this movie. I like it. I don't love it. I'm not holding it close to my chest and cuddling it, but I kind of like it. And it's not just that nostalgia factor of having seen it in 1978 at the Town Cinema in Sydney. That was long enough ago that I can look at the movie now and see it with fresh eyes. And it's a B picture It's not great, but it's got moments of wonderfulness. And those aliens really just work at least as well as aliens worked in much larger budget movies of the time. Those stop motion aliens are a work of art. They're incredibly skilled creature building, and all credit to the people who made them, especially Dave Allen. So that's the first movie I got for you. I just dragged it off the hard drive and watched it and had a good time with it. The second one, I've actually got a physical copy of. I've got a DVD of it. I don't know whether it's come out on Blu-ray. I don't know if it's a hidden gem. It was a large studio picture from MGM in 1968. It's got a cast of people who were on contract to the studios at the time and turned up in a lot of studio pictures. It was made by MGM. The producer was the wonderful George Pell. The director was Byron Haskin, who had done many, many good films like War of the Worlds. He did The Naked Jungle. He did a whole bunch of fine films. And the cast, George Hamilton, Suzanne Pleshette, Richard Carlson from The Creature from the Black Lagoon, Yvonne DiCarlo, Earl Holliman, Gary Merrill, Barbara Nichols, Arthur O'Connell, Nehemiah Persoff, Aldo Ray, and Michael Rennie. And it is The Power. The Power is a movie I really like. And this is the Warner Archive DVD of it. It was based on a novel by Frank M. Robinson, who was a science fiction writer and had an interesting career in between his science fiction writing. In fact, in San Francisco, he was a speechwriter for Harvey Milk because Robinson was a gay man and was very supportive of Harvey Milk's campaigns. So there is that. And there are a whole bunch of subtexts in this movie about hiding who you really are and having a secret power and having a different relationship to other men than some people do. The music is fantastic. It's by Miklos Rocha. And he doesn't just do normal orchestrations, because right at the start of the film, you see one of the instruments he's using on the soundtrack, which is a cymbalum, which is a kind of a hammered dulcimer kind of instrument. But it has a very unique sound to it. And Miklos Rocha's pounding soundtrack for The Power is something quite unlike anything you've seen in a movie of this type. Cinematography is good on the film as well. It does a really interesting use of primary colors, particularly reds and greens. The production design is all across the board fantastic. Okay, so the plot is this. It's set slightly in the future. In fact, there's a line at the start of the movie that says tomorrow. It's set in an institute that tests human endurance for the space program. They want to find out what the limits of human endurance are in order to make sure that their rockets are human survivable. Main character is a scientist called Jim Tanner, played by George Hamilton. Not the most nuanced of actors, but this is a role that he can handle. He's been better in a couple of other movies, but not this one. His girlfriend Marge, played by Suzanne Pleshette, is also another scientist there who's a geneticist. There's a whole team of scientists working together in the labs to test human endurance. One of the scientists, played by Arthur O'Connell, has used the scientists in the institute as a baseline study and has given them a whole bunch of different tests, including an IQ test. They're all blind tests, so none of them have names on them. He is incredibly distressed because he's found out one of the people in this institute has an off-the-scale intelligence. Its IQ is unmeasurable. It's at a level where whoever that person is can do extraordinary things and kind of psychic things, like telekinesis and telepathy and controlling people's minds and controlling people's sense of and contents of reality. So Tanner and Marge decide they're going to find out who this person is. After Arthur O'Connell's character delivers this news, he's found dead in a centrifuge in the institute, and he's clearly been murdered. A cop comes along, played by Gary Merrill, who used to be Betty Davis's husband, and he's investigating these things, and there are a whole bunch of impossible things. The centrifuge should have stopped with a dead man control, but it didn't. The centrifuge is working when it shouldn't be, and it's not working when it should. And the cops are kind of marginalized by this and start thinking that Tanner is the person doing the murders. So the surviving scientists are being hunted by somebody unknown. And there's also a government official called Nordland, played by Michael Rennie, who is affected by this as well. They find out that this person is actually a person called Adam Hart, who has used his mental abilities to wipe out people's memory of him. They talk to a whole bunch of different people, and each one describes Adam Hart as looking different. And the widow of one of the scientists suddenly totally changes her character. The character played by Yvonne De Carlo. Her character totally changes because she's under the influence of Adam Hart. And he goes out to find Adam Hart's hometown out in the desert and finds that the people there have been influenced as well. And so they go on this crazy surrealistic journey where the nature of reality can be changed by the will and the whim of this mysterious Adam Hart. Tanner starts hallucinating things looking at a toy shop window, and various machinery malfunctions unexpectedly because this supremely intelligent and supremely dangerous human being is trying to kill everybody that knows of his very existence. There's some really great visual storytelling in this movie as well. The fact that all of the scientists' offices are joined together in a big circle, and each one has a glass wall between the others, so everybody can see what everybody else is doing. There's some interesting visual storytelling there. And there's some interesting stuff with the character played by Earl Holliman, who's described as being a ladies' man, but he's overcompensating on that. And he's also talks to Tanner about being a manufactured personality, and just learn how to be a person by watching other people and mimicking what they do, which is one of the traits that some people on the autistic spectrum have. So there are all these interesting little character bits, which I'm sure are retained from the novel, but make the movie just that little bit more interesting and strange. And the sound design in this movie is great too. The sound of a human heartbeat becomes very important at a couple of stages. And the symbol and music in the background works well. And so when you watch this next time, just pay attention to the sound design. It's very rich, and it informs everything that happens on the screen in so many interesting ways. And of course, this one would have to have been a precursor to David Cronenberg's Scanners. It's got the same kind of things where there are people with extraordinary abilities who are trying to kill other people. And one of the things that Adam Hart does is erases all knowledge of Tanner's professional qualifications. His doctorates and his degrees and his PhDs all vanish from human memory and human record just because one man wants them to. And so there's that loss of identity aspect to the movie, which isn't dealt with deeply, but is dealt with as a way of Adam Hart flexing his muscles to Tanner and making it harder for Tanner to function. And it gets to the stage where everybody is unreliable as Jim Tanner tries to seek the truth. He can't trust what anybody says to him, including Margie's girlfriend. She is a reliable person, and she isn't affected very much by Adam Hart. He can't trust anybody in what they say or do. And that makes for really ramped up paranoia in this movie. I think it's incredibly underrated. And yes, it is a studio film, and it was a Studio B picture. But this is George Pal trying to do things in science fiction that nobody else was trying to do at the time. Leaving aside a leading man who's a little bit kind of vapid, this movie has a lot of science fictional background to it and a lot of really well thought out world building. Yeah, the Institute itself is beautifully designed. The production design is just fantastic, as indeed a lot of MGM's was, even though MGM was on the verge of bankruptcy and losing its backlot and all that in 1968. Everything looks beautiful in this, the same way it does in the Satan Bug. All the lab stuff in the Satan Bug looks good for the same reason. This movie, I think, is underrated, and rewatching it on the widescreen is just such a joy. Byron Haskin uses the widescreen well. The paranoia and that sense of having the whole world pulled out from under you is in this movie. The first time I saw it, blew me away. Every time I watch it, it blows me away, and I see more little details. Let me know if you've seen this one. Let me know if you've seen Laserblast. But particularly The Power. I think this one is an interesting film in so many ways. And had it been made a decade later, it would have been even more powerful. The special effects would have been more on point. They would have been in the political paranoia of the 1970s, and the movie would have hit harder for that reason. It was one of the last movies that George Powell produced. He did that poorly thought out Doc Savage movie in the 1970s. But for me, this is the last really good George Powell produced movie. Let me know what you think. So that's what I have for you this time around. A Poverty Row 1970s movie with some very good special effects in moments and a couple of good character actors in it. And a 1960s movie that has a lot of thought into it. And undoubtedly, it was one of the main influences on David Cronenberg's Scanners. So thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Let me know what you think of these movies. You can support the channel too if you'd like to. And it is getting around Christmas, so feel free by becoming a channel member, by donating through YouTube, or by becoming a patron at patreon.com/TerryTalksMovies. Next up, I've got the Monday video because it is one of the Mondays when I'm not doing a live stream. And I've got some interesting thoughts for that. So until then, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies. Watch some 1960s movies that just bend reality in a knot. And I'll catch you next time.